It's a simple picture, you see it every day, a person and their dog walking down the street, playing in a park, curled up on a couch. The bond is obvious, it's a deep, unspoken connection. It feels ancient, it feels like it's always been this way, but has it? When we think of prehistoric life, we picture hardship. We see people hunting mammoths, chipping flint, struggling for survival in a harsh, cold world. It's all about food, warmth, and not getting eaten. There doesn't seem to be much room for the kind of affection we give a pet. A pet seems like a luxury, a product of a world with full bellies and safe homes. So, did they have them? Did a person living 30,000 years ago look at an animal and feel that same pull of companionship? The answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's more complicated, and honestly, more interesting. To get there, we have to change our definition of a pet. Our modern idea of a pet, an animal kept purely for pleasure and friendship, is very new. For most of human history, the line between a useful animal and a beloved companion was blurry. In the prehistoric world, that line barely existed at all. An animal had to be useful. But that doesn't mean it wasn't loved. The story really begins with one animal. Not a pet, but a rival, a competitor, the wolf. During the Ice Age, our ancestors were not the masters of the planet. They were small bands of hunter-gatherers moving across vast, cold landscapes. And they were not the only social hunters out there. Wolves were everywhere. They hunted in packs, they communicated, they were intelligent, and they were very good at what they did. Humans and wolves were after the same thing large herbivores like deer, horses, and bison. They were direct competitors. You might think this would lead to permanent conflict. And it probably did a lot of the time, but they were also a lot alike. Both lived in family groups. Both relied on cooperation to bring down prey larger than themselves. Both had complex social structures. Maybe the similarity created a strange kind of respect, or maybe it just created an opportunity. The old story we tell ourselves is one of conquest. A brave hunter goes into the wilderness, finds a wolf den, snatches a pup, and tames it. It's a heroic story of man mastering nature, but it's probably not true. Think about it. A wolf den is protected by a pack of very capable, very angry wolves. Stealing a pup would be incredibly dangerous. And even if you succeeded, a wild wolf pup raised by humans is still a wild wolf. It's not a golden retriever. Taming it would be a difficult, lifelong, and potentially deadly task. It's a more likely story. And the one most scientists now support is less about conquest and more about convenience. It's called the self-domestication theory. It didn't start with humans grabbing wolves. It started with wolves approaching humans. Imagine a human camp at the end of a long day. There's a fire. People are butchering an animal they hunted. There are scraps of meat, discarded bones, bits of offal. To a hungry animal, this is a treasure trove, a free meal. Most wolves, naturally fearful of humans, would have stayed far away. But in any population of animals, there's variation. Some wolves are bolder than others. Some are less fearful. The wolves that were a little braver, a little more willing to get close to the strange, two-legged creatures and their fires, got a reward. They got food. The most aggressive, fearful wolves were likely driven off or killed. The ones that stayed hanging around the edges of the camp survived. They got to eat the leftovers. This gave them an advantage. They passed on their genes for slightly less fear, slightly more tolerance of humans to their offspring. Generation after generation, this process repeated itself. The camp became a reliable food source. The wolves that were best at exploiting it were the ones that succeeded. They weren't being tamed by humans, not yet. They were taming themselves, they were adapting to a new ecological niche, the area around a human settlement. They were becoming camp followers. Over thousands of years, these changes started to show. These sprint dogs began to look different from their wild wolf cousins. The fossil evidence tells this story in bone. One of the most famous pieces of evidence comes from Goyet Cave in modern-day Belgium. Scientists found a skull of a large canid, an animal in the dog family. It dates back more than 30,000 years. It's not quite a wolf, and it's not quite a modern dog. It has a shorter, broader snout than a wolf. Its teeth are a bit more crowded. These are subtle but significant signs of domestication. A shorter snout is a pedomorphic trait, meaning it's a feature of a juvenile that's retained into adulthood. It's a byproduct of selecting for tameness. As you select for less aggression, you often get other changes for free floppy ears, shorter snouts, curled tails. You get an animal that looks and acts more like a puppy its whole life. This wasn't a one-time event. Genetic evidence suggests this might have happened independently in different parts of the world, in both Europe and Asia. It was a long, slow dance between two species. At some point, the relationship shifted from tolerance to cooperation. Humans started to see the value in having these animals around. They were a fantastic early warning system. No predator could sneak up on a camp that had a pack of proto-dogs sleeping nearby. Their sharp ears and noses would pick up the danger long before a human could. They also helped with sanitation, cleaning up scraps that would otherwise rot and attract more dangerous scavengers. And then came the big one, hunting. A human hunter is smart, but a wolf is faster and has a much better sense of smell. Together, they were a lethal team. The dogs could track an animal for miles, corner it, and hold it at bay until the humans arrived with their spears and tools. The humans made the kill, and everyone shared the reward. This partnership was a game changer. It allowed humans to hunt more efficiently, to take down more prey. It gave them a massive survival advantage. This is where the line between working animal and pet begins to dissolve. To be a good hunting partner, a dog can't just be a tool. There has to be communication. There has to be a bond. The human and the dog have to understand each other's intentions. They have to trust each other. This is the foundation of the relationship we see today. That shared gaze, that unspoken understanding was forged on the Ice Age tundra during a hunt. The most powerful evidence for this bond comes not from living animals, but from dead ones. It comes from graves. In Bonn, Oberkassel, Germany, archaeologists found a double grave from about 14,000 years ago. Inside were the skeletons of a man, a woman, and a dog. This wasn't just a pile of bones. The dog had been carefully and intentionally buried with the people. This tells us the animal was important. It wasn't just a random camp follower. It had a place in their society, in their lives, and even in their deaths. But the story gets even more incredible when scientists examined the dog's skeleton. They found that as a puppy, it had contracted canine distemper, a serious viral illness. The teeth showed the telltale signs. Distemper is often fatal. Even when it's not, it causes severe sickness, fever, pneumonia, lack of appetite. This puppy would have been weak and helpless for weeks, maybe months. It couldn't have hunted. It couldn't have served as a guard. It offered no practical benefit to the humans. In a world where every mouth to feed was a burden, a sick animal would have been a liability. And yet, it survived. It lived to adulthood. The only way that's possible is if the humans cared for it. They must have kept it warm, brought it food and water, and protected it when it was vulnerable. They invested time and resources into nursing a sick animal back to health. You don't do that for a tool, you do that for a companion, you do that for a member of the family. This single burial is a window into the deep past, and it shows us a relationship that feels profoundly modern. These people, 14,000 years ago, loved their dog. So for the dog, the case is strong. They were the first, they were partners in survival, and they were also companions. The evolutionary paths of humans and dogs became intertwined. We changed them, and they changed us. Some scientists even argue that our partnership with dogs gave us an edge over Neanderthals. We don't know for sure, but it's clear that dogs played a huge role in our success as a species. They were our first and greatest animal allies. But what about other animals? Was it just dogs? The story of other pets is different. It's more recent, and it's tied to another massive shift in human history, the invention of farming. Around 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East, people started to settle down. They stopped chasing their food and started growing it. They planted grains like wheat and barley, and for the first time they had a surplus. They built granaries to store this surplus. This was a revolutionary change. But it also created a new problem. A big store of grain is a massive invitation to every mouse and rat for miles around. These rodents would move in, eat the grain, and contaminate what they didn't eat. For early farmers, this was a disaster. It was their food supply for the winter. This is where a new animal enters the story, the wildcat, specifically the Near Eastern wildcat. These cats were solitary hunters, perfectly designed to kill small rodents. And they were drawn to these new human settlements for one reason, the high concentration of prey. Just like the wolves at the Ice Age camps, the cats saw an opportunity. The bravest, most human-tolerant cats were the ones who ventured into the villages and granaries. And they were rewarded with an all-you-can-eat rodent buffet. Humans, in turn, quickly realized the benefit. These cats were providing a vital pest control service, free of charge. A cat in the granary meant more grain for the family. So they tolerated them. They didn't actively tame them, at least not at first. It was another case of self-domestication. It was a relationship of mutual convenience. The cats got food. The humans got pest control. Unlike dogs, cats weren't bred for cooperation. We didn't need them to hunt with us. We didn't need them to guard the village. We just needed them to be cats' independent, efficient killers of small things. This is why the domestication process for cats was so different and why their behavior today is still so different from dogs. A dog sees its human as the leader of the pack. A cat sees its human more as a useful, non-hostile roommate who provides food. The archaeological proof for this new relationship is stunning. On the island of Cyprus, archaeologists found a human grave that dates back 9,500 years. Buried just 40 centimeters from the human skeleton was the complete skeleton of a young wildcat. It was placed in its own small pit, its body oriented in the same westward direction as the humans. This is hugely significant. First, cats are not native to Cyprus. This means the cat must have been brought to the island by people on a boat. You don't go to the trouble of bringing a wild animal across the sea unless it has some value to you. Second, like the Bono Bear Castle dog, it was deliberately buried with a human. It wasn't eaten, it wasn't just thrown away, it was treated with a special kind of respect. This burial predates all Egyptian art depicting domestic cats by thousands of years. It suggests a close, individual relationship between a person and a cat right at the dawn of agriculture. It wasn't a pet in our sense of the word, it was a working animal, but it was also clearly more than that. It was an individual animal important enough to accompany a person into the next world. The stories of the dog and cat are the two great success stories of prehistoric pets. But there were other experiments, other hints of connections between humans and the animal world. In a burial site in Jordan called Uyun al-Hammam, dating back a staggering 16,500 years, archaeologists found a human grave containing the remains of a fox. The fox's skeleton was mostly complete. It seems to have been buried alongside the human. What's more, one of its bones had been broken and had healed in its lifetime, suggesting it might have been cared for. After the burial, the grave was reopened, and the fox's skull and one humerus were removed and placed next to the human's head. This suggests a complex ritual and a deep symbolic connection. This discovery is fascinating because it predates the clear evidence for dog domestication in that region. Were people trying to tame foxes before they settled on dogs? A fox is a canid, like a wolf. But they are much more skittish and solitary. Maybe they were kind of failed domestication. Perhaps humans were experimenting, trying to form bonds with various animals, and the fox just wasn't as good a fit as the wolf. Or maybe this wasn't about domesticating a species at all. Maybe it was just about one person and one fox. A single, unique friendship that left its mark in the archaeological record. It shows us that the desire to connect with animals is ancient and wasn't limited to just wolves and cats. Humans were reaching out, trying to build bridges to other species. This idea is supported by a famous modern experiment. In the 1950s, a Russian scientist named Dmitry Belyaev started an experiment to domesticate silver foxes. He didn't train them. He simply selected the tamest, least fearful foxes from each generation and let them breed. Within just a few generations, he saw dramatic changes. The foxes started to become friendly. They wagged their tails, they licked their human caretakers, and their bodies started to change too. They developed floppy ears, spotted coats, and curled tails, the same traits we see in dogs. Belyaev proved that the process of domestication, the selection for tameness, can happen remarkably fast. It makes the idea of a prehistoric person taming a single fox seem entirely plausible. Of course, people speculate about other animals. Did a caveman have a pet mammoth? Almost certainly not. The relationship with large herbivores was one of predator and prey. They were food, and sources of hide, bone, and ivory. Taming and keeping an animal that large and dangerous would have been impossible for hunter-gatherers. Cave paintings that show mammoths and humans are likely depicting hunts, or perhaps stories and myths. They aren't family portraits. What about birds or small mammals? It's possible. Taming a bird is certainly feasible, but the archaeological evidence is basically non-existent. Bones of small animals are fragile and rarely survive, and if they do, it's hard to tell if a bird was a pet or just dinner. Without evidence like an intentional burial, we are just guessing. So we come back to the original question. Did prehistoric people have pets? Yes, they did, but we have to see them through their eyes, not ours. In their world, survival was everything. An animal that lived with humans had to contribute. It couldn't just be a freeloader. The dog helped hunt and guard. The cat protected the food stores. They were partners in the business of living. This practicality was the foundation of the relationship. But it wasn't the whole story. The evidence is clear that on top of that practical foundation, humans built a structure of affection and companionship. The Bonn Oberkassel dog, nursed through a debilitating illness. The Cypress cat, brought across the sea and laid to rest with its human companion. The Jordan fox, given a place of honor in a ritual burial. These are not the actions of people who see animals as mere tools. These are the actions of people who have formed a deep emotional bond. These animals probably had names. They were recognized as individuals. They were part of the family. A child growing up in an Ice Age camp would have played with the camp dogs, just as a child today plays with the family dog. The bond was forged in those everyday interactions. In some ways, their relationship with these animals might have been deeper and more vital than our own. When your life literally depends on your dog's ability to find prey or sense danger, the trust and respect you have for that animal is immense. It's a partnership of equals in a way that our modern pet owner relationship often isn't. The dog wasn't just a pet, it was a teammate. The human need for companionship is a powerful force. We are social creatures. We build bonds with each other to survive. It seems only natural that we would extend this social instinct to other species, especially ones that could understand us and work with us. The evolution of a pet is really the story of an expanding family. It's a story of humans looking at the wild world not just as a source of food or danger, but as a source of potential friends and allies. The journey from a wary wolf scavenging at the edge of a fire to a dog sleeping at the foot of our bed is a long one. It's a 30,000-year-old story of coevolution. We shaped them, breeding them for traits we found useful and endearing. And they shaped us, helping us become the planet's most successful predators, and later, its first farmers. They protected our camps, our food, and our families. They gave us their loyalty and their skill. And in return, we gave them a home. We gave them food and safety. And we gave them our affection. We cared for them when they were sick. We honored them when they died. We made them a part of our world, a part of our story. So, the next time you scratch your dog's ears or watch your cat chase a sunbeam, remember that the bond you feel is not a modern invention. It's an ancient echo. It's a legacy of survival and friendship passed down through countless generations, stretching all the way back to a fire in the darkness of the Ice Age, where two different species first decided to face the world together.